Hey everyone! I finished my wishing rock wall and I have a tutorial for you on how to do the same. Go ahead and clean your wall, just wipe it down with a damp cloth and make sure it's free of any debris or grime. Gather your supplies. I've got a list of things I used here, but feel free to add whatever you would like. I used joint compound that was already mixed. It's really easy to use, and then you don't have to mix the powder in, but you can use the plaster if you would like. And then I just grabbed a few things I thought I might use: the broom from the dollar store, a spatula to apply with, some gloves, and one of the sponges that's a little bit porous to give some texture. You're going to create your base texture using joint compound and paint. So I mixed a chocolate and weather vane together with the joint compound, not fully mixed it, left it a little bit muddled so each of those colors would show through on the wall. And then I started applying it with a spatula. Let's create that base texture using our mixture. It doesn't have to be very thick, and it's a little bit easier to work with and will dry faster if it's thinner. So pull it across your whole wall, leave some areas that aren't completely covering it, and let some of your undercoat show through. Unless you have a wild colored wall, then don't do that. You want to cover all of it. This is about what it should look like. Now that you have it applied all over your wall, you're going to add your faux bark texture using crumpled paper. So you'll want to find your center line. This is where your vein or your vein line will be, and you are going to apply a crumpled bark texture from that line down to the bottom. Now we want to create some moonstone or cratered texture. From that vein line you've created up to the top is where you want to apply this texture, and I just dabbed it all over and it gave a really beautiful cratered finish. You can see right there. So you've got some variation in your textures, which is nice. I also used the dollar store broom and I added just a little bit of stippling here and there. Sometimes I would pull the brush across and create a line or a stroke because rocks have a lot of different texture. So you can kind of go crazy and do what you want. You can add a little bit or a lot, or you don't even have to use the broom. It's totally up to you. If it's too harsh, you can soften it up with your sponge a little bit, and then you've got all of your texture applied. Let that dry and you're ready to move on. It's time to create that vein. So this is your base for the vein, and it's going to be pretty wide. I think mine is probably about 12 to 14 inches wide over my whole wall. So you're going to take your darkest color. I used Wise Owl Carbon, and then I just stippled my line straight across the wall, and I kind of pulled that paint through and softened up that line. So pull it up and pull it down, and you really just want to offload any paint on your brush onto that line. It doesn't have to be perfectly smooth or perfectly blended. You just want to kind of create that base. Now it's time to build up that vein, give it a little bit of texture. I used the glass bead gel and I really liked the look of this. You could use any texture agent if you want. You could add a little bit of sand or something, but I really like the glass bead gel because of the texture that it gives. So I laid it down all the way across. just the center of my vein, and I probably went over it a couple times and made sure that I got enough glass beads laid down. Then I slowly pulled from that downwards to kind of blend that in a little bit. And then I used a sponge on the top part and just gently dabbed across to soften that up. The glass beads will mostly stay in place, but just be careful that you're not pulling them off with your sponge because it's not totally dry. So in some areas you might need to be a little bit more gentle and then just move slowly. After you've got that top softened up, pull down again from that middle line down and just offload your brush. It's mostly a dry brush you're going to be using now, but I pulled down because I liked the look of that texture. Oh, and then we've got Hank. He was rubbing up on my leg, and so I had to stop and say hi. So hi, Hank. Keep working on that vein line until you get it how you want. This is about what it should look like. So it's a little bit rustic, but you can see it doesn't have a super harsh line. It's blended up and blended down. I wanted to add a little bit of warmth to the wall, and so I decided to use some chocolate CSP and just go from below the glass bead line and stipple it across and pull it down a little bit. You can also use a mister and spray a little bit of water if you want to let it drip a little bit. That will give it some nice texture. You can have a paper towel handy and kind of dab up any excess if you need to, but just kind of play with it and create that warmth. We want to layer our rock and give it some more color and cover up some of that base. So you don't want to completely cover up your base, but you want to dab on some more paint. So I used gray linen in the CSP. I would stipple it on, and then I kind of just dry brushed from that center part outward, and I moved along the whole wall that way. So now I want to lighten up the overall look of the rock and have the color kind of come from the top down. So I'm loading quite a bit onto my brush, and the edges of the wall is where I started first. I offloaded my brush so it's pretty much completely covered, and then I just started pulling that paint down lightly. I would stipple it and then I would pull it down and just continue to do this across the entire wall. Be patient, this takes time for it to look good. If it's getting splotchy or you don't like it, just take a step back and dry brush in between. And then you can add in some thicker highlights. So I would load my brush and I would stipple on in between some of the more splotchy areas or in between the thicker and thinner areas and kind of just stipple on a thicker texture. I used both the white birch and snow owl to create some dimension. It's important to take breaks while you do this too. Step back, look at the wall as a whole, go grab a drink or a snack and come back, because you'll see different things that you need to adjust, or maybe you'll love it and you're overthinking it. This is about what it should look like, and now you're ready to add metallics. I'm using the Redesign with Prima Champagne, that color I showed you in the initial tutorial of our wishing rock. And I just took some on a small brush and lightly pulled it over top of our glass beads. So you can see now why I like the glass beads, because it gives kind of a texture that is very 3D, but it also looks really nice and it will grab onto some of that metallic paint and really pop. I also liked mixing that with the carbon first because you get even more dimension when you pull that metallic over the top. As your brush dries out, dry brush it and pull it up and down, and you're going to have a really nice soft vein line. I wanted to add some more dimension, and so I took some carbon, which is our darkest color we used, and put some on my brush, and I pulled from below that metallic line down And I did this really lightly. So it added a little bit of depth, a little bit of darkness, but it also added dimension because all of those texture peaks picked up that carbon and it really made everything pop. So you can pull it down a little bit or you can pull it all the way down to the bottom of your wall. Just be gentle when you do it so you don't have any harsh streak lines. So it's just the peaks that are catching that dark color, and that will really give you that 3D look and that pop that you really want. You can see here on the right, I've got the carbon dry brush, and on the left, I don't. You can see it just gives it a little bit more depth and makes things pop a little bit more. Let's create our final vein line. So these are the solid thin vein lines. I used an artist's brush. It's just a short, thin, flat brush that is very sturdy. And I went across the lines just like this. It didn't record when I initially did it, so I am replicating what I did, but just gently go across, crisscross the lines, and do your veins across. So how do I seal it? If you use the OHC, you don't need to seal it. The metallics don't need to seal it either. If you use the CSP, you can seal it with varnish, the 1 Hour Enamel Clear, or you can put some furniture salve over the top, which is what I did, just to kind of give it a little bit of protection. And this is what the final looks like. I absolutely love it. I hope that you guys will try this and let me know when you do and post some pictures. I can't wait to see.